I'm 15 and I'm going to be moving to Taiwan alone for free in less than 4 months. Hi, I'm Josuna, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my personal experience with the study abroad application for NSLI, and spoiler alert, I get accepted. First of all, what is NSLI? So NSLI is funded by the Department of State, and it's a full scholarship for US high school students to study abroad in a foreign country to study one of their 8 languages. So the 8 languages that they offer is Arabic, Mandarin, Hindi, Indonesian, Russian, Korean, and Persian and Turkish. And you can either study abroad for a whole academic year or a summer. I'm personally going to study abroad in Taiwan to learn Mandarin for an academic year. That's 10 months. So I've actually been learning Mandarin my whole life, and there are so many reasons that I want to study abroad, especially in Taiwan, but that's something that I'll go into in a later video. So let's start with my experience with the research process. So as you may or may not know, I moved from Hawaii to Vermont in August 2021. I began a very in-depth research process of various study abroad programs, and I created like a whole spreadsheet to document all the pros and cons and eventually decide on applying to 3 study abroad programs: SYA, YFU, and NSLI. NSLI was a no-brainer. It had no application fee. It was a complete scholarship. It was one of the only ones that offered studying abroad in Taiwan to learn Mandarin, which is what I really, really wanted to do. So if you want to know more about my research process, I'm definitely going to go into more detail about that in another video. So now for my application submission, the first one that was due was NSLI. It was due in the beginning of November, and the other ones weren't due till a few months later, so I decided to focus on NSLI's application first. So I began by drafting my essays, preparing all my documentation, getting recommendations. I personally asked my previous employer for a recommendation for the NSLI application, but for the other applications, I asked my teachers. Until the deadline, I constantly was revising and redrafting my essays. I was asking my parents, my siblings, my family, my friends, my grandparents, my teachers. Everyone was helping me with my essays, and I'm so glad I did that because in the end, I redrafted it and revised it to the point where it was quite literally perfect. And I'm actually really proud of it, but I think I put a lot more work than I really needed to put into it. But I mean, I got accepted, so. The essay that was most fun to write was my letter to my host family. NSLI told us that it would not only be used in the selection process, but it would also actually be given to our potential host families, and it would be our first impression on them. And it was actually kind of fun talking about myself in those essays and introducing myself to them, so I didn't mind that one. Once I submitted my NSLI application, over the next few months I also worked on my application for SYA and YFU, and I reused some content from the NSLI essays, but I also had to write a lot more new ones. So I never actually really considered myself a writer, and I rarely ever wrote or read for fun. I think these essays from just my applications really helped me grow as a writer, and it's crazy to look at the first version versus the last version and see how much better they are. And I was already really dedicated to studying abroad in my junior year, and to be honest, I'm pretty proud of how they turned out in the end. Anyways, one morning in mid-December, I woke up to a notification from an email from NSLI telling me that I had advanced to the semi-finalist stage. Over 3,500 applicants apply to NSLI a year, and only about half of them become semi-finalists. So even though it didn't mean the world, I was still pretty proud of myself. And if you become a semi-finalist, you should too. So I was prompted with a whole bunch of next steps now that I was a semi-finalist, and one of them was to make sure I had a valid passport. And it needed to be valid for 6 months after I would have gotten back from Taiwan. And this is the case even for semifinalists who haven't fully been accepted yet. This is the case because the application process for passports is really, really long and complicated, especially for me. Well, as I mentioned before, I moved from Hawaii to Vermont in August. that also meant that the guardianship had to transfer from my parents to my grandparents. However, I live in a small town in rural Vermont, and it seems like anything official takes a really, really long time. So we had filed for the guardianship change all the way back in August. But in December, when I got the semifinalist notification, we were still waiting for the court to give us a court date to validate the guardianship change. So what does that have to do with the passport? Well, you need your guardian to sign and consent for your new passport. You may be thinking, okay, so just get your parents to sign. They're still technically your guardians. Yeah, that's what I thought too. But the problem is that they need to be there, both parents, with you in person and sign in the same room as you when you get your new passport. My parents are in Hawaii. They were quite literally
on the other side of the globe.
We were constantly having to exchange calls between my parents, my grandparents, the Hawaii officials, the Vermont officials, all while trying to accommodate a 6-hour time difference. So what did we end up doing? Well, before we knew any of this, we actually had an appointment with the Vermont passport office, and we had waited so long to get this appointment, and we showed up just for them to tell us that what we had to do was get my parents to go to their passport office and get a note signed in person and notarized and then physically mailed to us, so then we could take it into the passport office and have my grandparents sign for me. Yeah. Once we finally got the note mailed to us, all of our documents in order, and everything figured out, and we waited for our appointment, we finally were able to get my passport application in. And we actually had to pay for it to get expedited, which means that it would just be made quicker. And I still got my passport kind of late, but I think it'll be okay. Ironically, just after all of this chaos, the court finally reaches out to us to validate the guardianship change. So there were 3 other things that I needed to do as a semifinalist: fill out my placement information, my medical evaluation form, and schedule my interview. And all of that was really easy. I breezed through that really quickly. So the next part that I'm going to be talking about is the whole interview process, but that's going to be a second video, so make sure to stay tuned for that, and make sure to like and subscribe, and check out my blog, and follow me on Instagram, and yeah. Bye!